Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first vocal action Conver-Series, Black Women in the Workplace. This is a four-part conversation about the history of Black women in labor, how that history has impacted our health and wellness, and how we show up in the workplace. And then we move into how the workplace can be accountable to us and also how we can be accountable to ourselves and each other. So this conversation started out of something very personal for me. I am Rashana Rhodes, the CEO and founder of Vocal Action LLC. We are a strategy and philanthropy consultancy headquartered here in the DMV, but we have clients all over. And I'm happy to be starting this conversation today, part 1.1. So if you notice, part one is also going to be in sections. So I'm really excited to have Dr. Indya Jackson here, who I would love to introduce herself to everyone watching.
Hey y'all, my name is Dr. Indya Jackson. As Rashana already said, I am an assistant professor of African American literature at a small liberal arts college in the Northeast. My primary areas of study are Black Power study, African American literature, after 45, studies of carcerality, anti-Black surveillance, and Black death. So Afro-pessimism as well. That's
Yes.
what I do.
Okay, so I actually have a couple questions already. You said after 45,
Mhm.
meaning is it 1945 or is the president 45?
No. Oh, after 1945. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. So what does that, is there, what happened in 1945 that makes after 1945?
Well, if it was really up to me, I would say that I really do specialize in mostly literature from 19. I'd probably change those dates, maybe focus more just on the Black Power era, but it's traditional in literature to separate literature in the 20th century from 1900 to 1945 or 40, and 1945 or 40 to the present. And that's really just based upon World War II beginning
Mm.
or the ending and some cultural changes, I think, that coincide with that, but really based on the war. So it's not necessarily, that's just
Yeah.
confusion.
Yeah, and does that make sense? Does that make sense for like Black people? Like if like that breakdown or how they categorize it?
I would say not necessarily, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think it makes more it might make more sense to do if we were just focusing along the 20th century pre and post Civil War. I mean, civil rights movement. I could see making more sense, but yeah, I don't know, because I mean that early half of the 20th century encapsulates a lot, including the Harlem Renaissance, including what's known as the Chicago Renaissance, and some of the early stages of the civil rights movement literature are included in that as well. So
Yeah.
I already
Well,
doing a lot of work.
okay, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because I'm like, it'd be interesting. I'm sure there are some different events and I guess catalyst events that might follow that same timeline for Black people. But I feel anytime I've either been in, educational setting talking about Black history, or even just in, personal settings, we sort of group things by the different events, like some of which you name, like definitely like Civil War, civil rights, different Renaissance, Harlem, you did talk about Chicago. I did not know of that, so I'd be interested in learning about that and just different things that have happened to Black mass incarceration, right? Like so war on drugs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I also think it will be interesting that in 20 years will we also, I think we will include this 20 years and we will call it like Black Lives Matter.
Almost certainly, I can see.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter, and the dominant culture might call it like, post truth, post Trump era.
Oh Lord Jesus, I can't. I can't. Well, then it will really be. Then it will really
Post
will be
Obama as well.
45.
We might call it post Obama.
Okay, I think Black people call it post Obama. I think white people want to say uh, either post Bush or post Trump, but I think it is. They're gonna definitely say it's post Trump. But then you'd be remiss to include Obama if we're gonna classify it at least as Black Lives Matter, because I mean you have to include him for all of the successes and failures during that time.
I could see it being, structured along the lines of like technological advancement, like the ubiquitous.
Mm.
Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm
That
sure
is true.
whatever they want to do.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That is true. And then you also mentioned is it Afro pessimism?
Mhm.
What is that?
It's actually really, I guess, complex. I think anybody who knows a bit about it knows that it's um, hard to sum up in a way that is short and digestible. But if I'm going to do my best, I would say Afro pessimism is very succinctly stated as the belief that anti-blackness structures the world.
Yes.
Yep, that it just structures everything.
Now, and I know we've talked about this before. Why is that why is that called pessimism versus reality, fact?
um, I think that there is many different answers to that question, and
Mhm.
it might be difficult for me. I can only speak really from my perspective, though I do think it's been recently addressed in some of the literature, but I haven't gotten around to reading the most uh, recently published kind of critical uh, offering on it by
Okay.
Wilderson the third. It's called Afro pessimism, but there's been
Okay.
leading to this, over a long time. But he's one of the progenitors of Afro pessimism, so I would like to see if he, actually addresses that question. But I think that people often do kind of get caught up in that word pessimism, and people, assume, there's just some assumptions that people make, and
Mm.
people contrast it to what's called black optimism, which I don't know enough about to necessarily talk at length about right now. But I will say that what I think is most, um, I think, palpable, like um, in this like theoretical framework, is the belief that like um, the only way to make the world a place that's safe for Black people requires the complete. It's really a restart of the world. Like it requires,
Mhm.
like the end of this all to an extent. And so I think that does preclude certain iterations of hope. Um, but I don't think that Afro pessimism is without hope. I think one of the kind of most consistent threads throughout is the um, history of Black people struggling, and also the kind of, I think there's an affirmation in that if we can't do anything, we can always struggle, and that not struggling as in like, I can't pay my bills, but like, we could still resist, like
Mhm.
sometimes
Yeah.
that might be all that we have, but I think,
Mhm.
that's better than nothing, and so I
Yeah.
think by not saying that they're, not necessarily affirming that, there's going to be a better, brighter day when we're all holding hands, and
Mm.
working together in harmony. I think Afro pessimism can't see that, as being possible. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that's why.
Yeah, yeah, and I can see how someone would say that's pessimistic, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I also see why that there's a need for that, unfortunately, even somewhat as we live, like to Black women in our 30s, we might not ever see the holding hands, right? And based on like current events that are happening, it doesn't feel likely,
Not feel likely.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering if like Black optimism is if like Charlemagne's book, what is it, like being Black is a privilege. I wonder if like
Black privilege.
Black privilege, like I wonder if something like that falls into Black optimism. I don't really know. Just
I can't say that I picked that up, but possibly.
yes, yes, yes. So I'm wearing my Tuskegee taught me shirt. There you
E
go. Special because Dr. Jackson and I met at Tuskegee University before she was Dr. Jackson, but we all knew that.
Way before.
Yes, but we all knew that she was on her way to being something, to being something so great. And we also are sorority sisters. And so when I heard you say that you were talking about, just African American literature being one,
Uh-huh.
one of your passions, I immediately thought about our professor that I'm sure you had at Tuskegee, Dr. Burns. Um,
I love Dr. Burns.
Me too.
I love Dr. Burns. Yeah, I spoke to her after I finished my dissertation because obviously she was in my acknowledgments, and I just sent it to her, and she's retired now, but I definitely had to let her know the impact that she had on my career. So
Yes. And what did she respond to you?
yeah, she did, and she told me she was going to take a look at it. I have to get back in contact with her. So, that was, right at kind of towards the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think the pandemic has a way of kind of just making everything, more prolonged than usual. But yeah, I definitely want to follow up with that. But it was great
Yes.
to hear from her, and of course, Dr. Nkuma too.
Yes. 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 I know. So proud. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, it's good that we just started with defining some of the some of the areas of your expertise and interest, because we also want to, as we begin to talk about Black HERstory, we have to define the terms of which we're speaking of today. So, I want to start with just a conversation about Black, and for the purposes of this conversation, what do you think, or who do you think is Black?
Um, so that's definitely a question I think that can be answered in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. I think before I like give my official answer, I want to like contextualize it by saying that you know um, there's different understandings of blackness at different places in the world, at different times, in the world. So if this, definition doesn't hit home to you, we're probably like, operating within completely, different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
So but the way that I understand it is that, and this is, me, I guess, kind of in my Afro pessimism bag right now.
Okay, get in your bag.
So, so believe it's Dia Hartman, who's I guess you might say another progenitor of Afro pessimism, who says that um, we are the nation. Wait, what did she say? That we are the nation's. No, we give the nation coherence because are its underbelly, and people know who they are from a near or far relation to the black body, which means the way that I translate that is that white people, initially were like, okay, I know I'm not black because I'm not that, like
Right.
the black
Mm-hmm.
person. And then people come from, around the world, to the United States, and they say, okay, because I'm talking particularly within the U.S. context, and they say, okay, well, I might not be white, but I know I'm not that, right? And so that's
Mhm.
how they understand who they are. And Black people are people who can never not be Black. So we know that people came over and were Italian and they weren't white, but they also weren't Black, and they eventually
Right.
became white. We know that, the same can be applied to other, groups. The Irish, of course, are one of those groups. But even beyond that, we can look at certain groups, like uh, Asians, right? Like
Mhm.
those who have certain proximity to whiteness in America. I believe it's Kathy Park Hahn, who ends her kind of, I guess you might call it a memoir, Minor Feelings, and saying that, I believe she's a Chinese American author, and she says that about Asians, that we are the next in line to be white, we're the next in line to be erased. And so
Mm.
there's, in our
Mm.
popular understanding, though things, have been shaken up throughout the course of the pandemic, that Asian people have a certain level of proximity to whiteness.
Yeah.
And light skinned Latinos, and just all of these other groups, are always,
Mhm.
at least a step above us, right? Even you might
Yeah.
even say, certain um, Black immigrants, are in some ways privileged above African Americans, whether it's, you have an accent, or you came from a country where you were already trained as a physician, you know.
Mhm.
So these other kinds of markers. And so, but still Black. So my answer is that Black people are people who can never become white.
I love that answer. I love that answer. I love that answer. Because that oh, wait. So now wait, so when you say Black people that never become white, so that would that mean an Asian person in this conversation? Not a biracial Kamala, but like an Asian.
No, because I think that in certain, for example, Arabs, we recognize them, based upon certain ethnic um, lines, but they, I believe, are still, for example, think about Kim Kardashian, recognized as white, in our
Some of them
democracy.
check. And some of them check Caucasian,
Yeah,
white.
Asian Caucasian, and I've known, in particular East Asians to do that. And so, even if there's a group that has not yet reached the level of whiteness, being able to access, certain levels of whiteness that Black people can't, I think sets the stage for us to at least be able to uh, speculate that they could one day, be swallowed into what we understand as whiteness. Um,
Yeah,
that has allowed other people to, enter at certain points throughout history. And so, yeah, there's other people who might not be considered white right now, who in 100 years, everybody thinks, okay, yeah, of course they're white.
yeah,
Black people are never allowed to become that.
yeah, I agree with that. And what I've learned during the pandemic, because it seems like everyone has had more time at home to share their opinions and thoughts on social media. So I've had the benefit and sometimes misfortune of of reading everyone's opinion.
Girl.
Okay, right. But I've learned that also just based on where you're from, can I don't want to say alter, but it definitely influences. That's what I'm looking for. It influences what your understanding is. Specifically, I think about there's been various conversations around Latinos, specifically, if they're Black, if they're not Black, because I don't know, it seems like every 2 years, J Lo song resurfaces where she says the N word, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, J Lo used the N word," or we have these or AOC, or what's his name? He's in Silk Sonic.
Oh, Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars, and so we have these different conversations about like, are they Black? What does that mean? And then like OG is, she has faced colorism on Basketball Wives, and specifically she's talking about not just from her lighter skin castmates, but also particularly from Evelyn Lozada, who we know is also Puerto Rican from the Bronx. And so in those conversations, it's always very interesting to read what people feel. And I find that it's always interesting for me because going to Tuskegee specifically, and then becoming a Zeta afforded me the opportunity to meet Black people, which I always knew Black people. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like I didn't know Black people existed outside of Boston, clearly, right? Yeah. But it afforded me an opportunity to actually really sit down and talk to people, from outside, Black people from outside of where I lived. And I always find it interesting that these conversations happen because being from Boston, I never thought twice about J-Lo using the N-word. And I know that's the same thing that Evelyn Lozada has been heard or quoted as saying, using the N-word as well. And just to preface this, I personally am not a fan of the N-word, which is why I'm saying the N-word. It's not, I don't use it personally. I don't like friends, family, whoever to use it with me, or use it talking to me. Now, if they use it in their conversation and I'm there, it doesn't matter. But I never thought it was like, oh, like her using it, because I know that culturally Black people use the N-word. And I never really, I don't know if I ever saw her. I don't know if I saw her as Black, but I didn't see her as not Black either, growing up in Boston. So, and I think that's because I guess traditional, and the reason I'm saying traditional, I struggle with it too, is because it's like, I also knew like Black Latinos growing up. Mm-hmm. And some of them said that they were Black. I also know Black Latinos, like, and I mean Black Latinos, like, especially from like Panama and Honduras, Costa Rica, places like that, who were Black very clearly, and, checked white. And we had to have I had to have conversations like, I don't understand what's happening, because, so yes, that was a very interesting conversation. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't really think about it, and then as I read more, I realized that people who may have grown up in places where they didn't have a high Latino population, or if they did, it was like very segregated. Like it wasn't like you all lived together. That's a different understanding and experience. Mm-hmm. And then also people who are from the West Coast have a different experience with, Latinos that they've been exposed to. And it also made me think, like, even having that conversation, which I hope to do here, as I'm starting this conversations around just breaking it down, like not just Latino, but also breaking it down the same way we break Black down. Like there are a bunch of different types of Black people, but also breaking Latino down by like nationality. I think is somewhat important because culturally and historically, the migration or immigration here means something different based on those things. But I just find that it's always very interesting to me when those conversations come up. Just about like who and how, and like how is this person, and how most of the people who are, I guess, targeted or called out, however we want to use it, many of them are from New York or from the Northeast. And so we're just kind of like, okay, like they are one of us. I remember growing up, we called them Spanish, and we still call them Spanish, and they called themselves Spanish. And it wasn't until I had a job, and a white woman was like, white woman was like, you can't call them Spanish. They're not from Spain. And that's not how she said it. Shout out to Amy, but that is not how Amy said it. That's how I heard it. Okay.
Yeah.
But what we ended up having a good conversation about, because I when she said it to me, I actually felt offended, because I was like, well, doesn't she know I know they're not from Spain? Like, right? And so I was like, I'm not calling them Spanish because they're from Spain. I'm calling them Spanish because they speak Spanish. And that's why we call them Spanish, because they speak Spanish. And that is what differentiates them from us, like in terms of where I grew up and how we grew up together. It was like we all live in the same neighborhoods, like we all eat the same food, or not the same food, but I mean we share foods, and culture. And what different the only difference between you and me is that you speak Spanish and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think that is it's always interesting in terms of Black and how we define it. Yeah, but I do go ahead.
Well, most of my experience in the US has been in the South, so it's all been very black, white. Like,
Yeah.
it's very, I feel like it's very clear cut in the South. Like,
Yeah. That's true. That's true. That is very true. That is very true. Unless, like, when I went to the South, that was somewhat of a shock for me. And even now, I mean, I live in Maryland now, which is considered the South. It is still different a little bit. And I always talk about food as like one of the biggest differences, because growing up, it wasn't like I knew the difference between Puerto Rican food
mm-hmm.
versus Dominican food versus Haitian food versus Cape Verdean food versus Jamaican food versus Trinidadian food, right? Like the difference. And so when I moved here and everything is just like Caribbean restaurant, I'm always like, okay, but who Caribbean what? Like what am I gonna get? Like who's the cook? Because that's going to determine what I order, and what I expect on the menu. So that continues to be one of the biggest things that I miss about home.
I feel that.
Yeah. And then I also think it's important too, for the purpose of this conversation, just as we go forward through the Conver-Series, just around health and wellness, and then what the workplace can do to be accountable, and what we can do to be accountable to ourselves, is really exactly what you said. And I'm sorry that I'm not going to say it exactly how you said it, but it was perfect. Which was, that Black is really people who cannot be white, right? Did I paraphrase that? Okay. And I do believe that is how the workplace looks at us as well. And I think that is somewhat of a shock for some people, as we're talking about like immigration and ethnicities and things like that. But ultimately, I think the workplace, just as American society, will let them know very quickly, you have no hopes of being white. Therefore, go over there with the rest of them. Yeah. Yeah. So we were able to get the definition of Black women, for the purpose of this conversation. And for the purpose of this conversation, women is anyone who says that they are a woman, like anyone who is a woman, period. Yeah, but I do think that at some point, and I do take notes. So if you all see me like looking over here, it's because I'm like taking notes, because these conversations can be broken down even more. I do think it is worth having a conversation about, like, if you are a like traditional presenting woman versus if you are a non-traditional presenting woman, like what does that mean in terms of the workplace? Because I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine that there is something different that happens there. And then workplace is anywhere you work. So we talked about a lot about definitions, and I think that that's important to definitely, you know, start this conversation, especially this part about Black HERstory. And Dr. Jackson, where would you say as Black women, our history starts? I know your answer is going to be slavery.
As Black women in the United States, I think, I mean, it has to start, with slavery um, because the way we think about Black now is as far as the United States goes, like only happens if there's middle passage.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only way that we get to thinking about Blackness in the way that we do in 2021. So I think that, yeah, I'm all in my Afro-pessimism bag today.
It's
But
okay.
just, thinking about the transatlantic slave trade, there was a point where you have all these West Africans, predominantly from different, tribes, the Mende, the Shanti, the Yoruba, the Igbo, the San, the Khan, all these different tribes, were put into the bellies of slave ships and purposely separated from people who shared a tongue with them or the same language and shared culture with them. So they, were metaphysically wiped out to an extent. Um,
Mm.
and when they were brought to America, again, they were purposely kept, away from other people who came from the same tribes as them, so they couldn't continue the proliferation of their culture, so that there was a new culture built here. And so people who were once Yoruba and Igbo and all these other different groups, they, came in the middle of you can say that in the belly of the slave ship, they became Black, or they became nigger, or they became,
Mm.
African American or whatever, but they were no longer Ashanti. That didn't count anymore. That didn't matter anymore. There was something new. So
Yeah, I'm actually just letting that sit because it's something that we know, but when you mentioned that just being metaphysically like erased, you know, like that yeah, that that definitely hit differently because that is true, you know? And
all
yeah.
these traditions, food ways, stories, jokes, practices, customs, clothing, like just everything that makes you a culture, which makes, a people, that's taken away. Like you can't do it anymore. Certainly some of those things we found ways to hold on to, but
Mhm.
like I couldn't tell you what Ashanti culture is like, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, we are new, we are Black.
Yeah. 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 And what role do you think Black women, we talk about labor in historically starting with slavery? I mean, we know Black women participated in the American labor force probably from, you know, we definitely know even prior to boarding the ship, and then on the ship, and then, you know, of course, here. Um, how does that what type of relationship do you like does that create? And I know we're just like having a conversation here, but like, yeah, what type of relationship is even possible? Like, positive relationship is possible with the labor force, with the workplace, thinking just about that history.
Positive. That's a big
That's a
question.
big word.
Big. Um, Positive relationship with Black women.
And maybe it's not positive. I mean, maybe that's part of the conversation. Like maybe maybe it's never positive. Maybe it's just
I think
Actually.
all of our labor has been under coercion, in one way or another. So even if we're thinking about the labor of a mother bringing a child into this world, which has often for Black women, been in very under under duress, um, without the desire to bring forth life, as a result of sexual assault, with great precarity in terms of like resources, healthcare, or just without the hope of being able to like love your child like and care for them
Yeah.
long term. All these different ways women working right up until in the field right up until they gave birth, having to be wet nurses as soon as they began to
Mhm.
produce milk for the master's children, being forced into slave breeding plantations, which were their own institutions,
Yes.
which white historians have often, tried to obscure the fact that there were plantations that were explicitly for the purpose of breeding slaves.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's, I mean, we can go from there to, after the Civil War, women working in the domestic sphere, or those rare instances where we did, get to, build our own. Oftentimes, even Black women entrepreneurs being faced with, um, the just negative consequences from jealous white people. But
Mhm.
that wasn't always the story, but an overwhelmingly common story. Women laboring, doing domestic labor for white people for a very long time, really up until maybe um, a, two generations ago. My grandmother's generation may be the last generation where that was very common, like a
Yeah.
form of labor for Black women. Um,
I think about like I mentioned when we opened up that this Conver-Series comes out of something very personal. And the specific situation was that I worked at a place and I was employed, and I was a really great worker. And I overextended myself because I really believed in the mission and the work that we were doing. Um, but in overextending, it was always with a conversation about, you know, I don't mind taking this on right now because I know that relief is going, the understanding that relief is going to come. Relief never came, period. And, what I was met with when I physically expressed, I'm drowning, right? It was, but you're doing so well. I literally just finished having an outstanding performance review, and, had the highest marks. I think the highest you can get is a 4. I never have had a mark below like a 3.7.
mhm,
So like I'm literally getting the highest marks. And they're like, yes, this is so great, Rashana. You know what I mean? Like, this is such a good performance review. Like you're doing awesome. How do you feel? Right? Like, it's like the Super Bowl. What are you going to do next? And I'm like, I'm drowning. Like, I'm drowning
mhm,
and I need help. And they're like, but you're doing so. Yes, but to meet this level, I'm drowning. Like, are you listening to me? Like, I'm drowning. And it reminded me, just as you said, like Black women having children even today under duress, under mediocre, by choice, medical care, because whatever, all the isms and schisms, as my dad as my dad would say.
without proper final, what would be considered a proper financial kind of nest egg, right? Things
Yeah,
that this, I mean, we wouldn't have no Black children if we, had to wait for it. Despite being the most educated demographic in the country, still making, 60 something cents on a dollar to a white man, every man. So, I mean, still um, going above and beyond, knowing that we made white households run with a
yeah,
recent ran, for generations. It's Black women in white households also being, under the kind of whims of sexually predatory white men,
Yeah.
very jealous and just callous like white women, um, as well, which is, didn't change 100. It wasn't a complete change from slavery to, so-called freedom under Jim Crow, and even beyond, still working that spirit to now.
To now. Yeah.
Yeah, where I mean,
Yeah.
how can we, yeah, talk about the situation? Like, even though, again, we do achieve, above and beyond as a demographic, still not, necessarily reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah. I think about like Me Too, the Me Too movement,
Hmm.
and how that was started by a Black woman and she started it to specifically discuss sexual abuse and rape and harassment, like within the Black community.
Tarana,
And what'd you say?
Tarana Burke, I believe is her name.
Yes, thank you, thank you. This is why she's the doctor, y'all, because I'm not good with names, but I need to be better. So yeah, she started to have that conversation, and just how it just seems like not. I don't want to say it evolved into something else, because I think what it evolved into is still necessary conversation, but it does feel somewhat that it has been taken over
I mean,
by
white women became the face. White women
right.
became the face and the voice, of it.
Yeah, like it's like what what happened here? Like what happened here?
That
Um
labor.
it's that labor. It's that labor, and it's also I think what feels hurtful about it as a Black woman in the workforce is that it often feels like, because people think that Black women were just able to, like, we're superwoman. We don't feel pain, we don't get tired, we are somehow stronger, that we can just continue to take, because that's already like the expectation that we're meeting in the workplace. And I think that to some extent Black women actually do meet and often exceed that expectation. But it just feels like I just used to describe myself as like the workhorse, and that is ultimately what I feel like my role in the workplace, unless you work for an agency that, sees Black women as human, as people, that somehow you fall into being the workhorse. And anytime you decide to not be the workhorse, something is going to have to break you, bring you down to size, whatever that is. Because even in that example in Me Too, it just, and say her name one more time.
Tarana Burke.
Yeah, like Tarana Burke, it just seems like this was her vision, and she just faded, became, and white women took over, but yet she still does a lot of the work. It just, that's what it feels like. It feels like we are workhorse, like we were workhorses, we are chattel.
Yeah, that reminds me of the it's kind of a response hashtag that went viral for a moment called "Not Your Mule." I think
Yeah.
where Black women, in response, I'm not 100% sure, but I think is in response to some white women and also other non-Black people's request of are kind of like asking like, where are the Black women, where are Black people, where like, where are we, as far as supporting their movements or movements that they
Hmm.
you know should be, yeah, would be leading, and just Black women's response that we are not your mule.
Yeah, that's and I. It's always just like weird conflict, because I do believe that if you want to be successful, you need to get you a Black woman. Okay. Whether that is you want to be a successful person, you need to date and marry a Black woman. If you want to be a successful business, you need to hire Black women. And as we are having the opportunity to showcase that over and over again, I think the statistics would agree that things excel and things become more successful when we are leading. So I balance that with the constant requests for us. Like it's like, you know, we need Biden to be in the White House, or we need Trump to not be in the White House. Black women, like we need to get Biden through the South Carolina primary. Black women. Asian people are, being discriminated against and physically harassed and assaulted. Black women. Kids are dying through police brutality. Black women. And it's like we're being called to solve the world's problem, at the same time also being called to solve the problems in our own community. And it just it's like we can't do it all.
Yeah, I hate I saw a certain shirt not so long ago, and it was like Black women are superheroes, and I'm just like, I'm not a superhero though. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not. Don't expect that from me. I'm not. I'm regular, degular. I am not a superhero. I'm not trying to save anybody but myself right now.
Yes, shout out to I'm thinking of Karen White, her song, I'm Not Your Superwoman. Seriously. I mean, it's like I used to operate as if I was Superwoman. And one of the most freeing things that I did was and sometimes I still have to tell myself, I have to say it out loud. Shauna, you are not Superwoman. You cannot do it all. Because it's the only thing that's going to ensure that I'm still here. Period. I think that mentality, it deteriorates our health. And that's never, then what good are we to anybody? But most importantly, what good are we to ourselves if, we just are burnt out all the time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just finished this, I mean, PhD, and I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD back to back. And I really wish I would have taken some time off, but I didn't. But, now that I'm done, now I have a tenure track job, and like people are like, oh, what are you gonna like do like now? Like, what are you like gonna do? Like, do you want to publish a book? Do you want to do this? Oh, I could really see you do this and that. And I'm like, I just want to get tenure, and like that's really my goal. That's the goal. And they're like, but you're gonna like, have like more goals. And I'm like, this is my goal. Like, I'm happy. Like, this is the life
Yes.
I want. Like, I don't have to like, I understand the desire for people. Some people want to, be Melissa Harris Perry. Some people want to publish, like, Michael Eric Dyson. It'll be nice to put out a book, one day. Who knows what will happen then? But I became a professor because I want to teach. I enjoy teaching. I love teaching. That's what I'm good at. That's what I want to do. Like, I don't have to be a celebrity. I don't have to have, all these other kind of like media deals. I'm not saying that I'll, never be open to that, but that's not like my goal. Like, I think, that I found the career that I like, and now I'm gonna like do like, get tenure and continue to, perfect my craft as an educator, and then I'm gonna do my hobbies. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. What's so funny is I was talking to my dad, and I don't know how people will take this, but um he was saying, yeah, because you're building your business, and it's gonna be, a legacy. Like, you want to set it up so that it will last beyond you. And when he said that, I was like, huh? And I honestly, I mean, like, my goal is, yes, that I want Vocal Action to be my business. I want to pour everything I have into that, and that sustain me, right? Like, I don't want to always be an employee. Like, that is my goal, to transition to being an independent entrepreneur. Period. But I never thought about, what's going to happen to vocal action once I'm gone. Yes, I hope to build something that is meaningful, that after I'm gone, someone does see this YouTube, or someone does come across this on Facebook, and it does inspire them to have these conversations, or to look at it to say, oh wow, this is where Black women were in 2021 and the year 3000 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, this is where we are in the year 3000, like I do hope that. But to me, that's legacy, right? Even if vocal action at that point is no longer there. I don't know. But what I do know is my plan is to be an independent entrepreneur, to build something that is great. What greatness is, I don't fully know yet. And then when I retire, because I do want to retire early, even from vocal action, okay? Like, I do I want to be an adjunct professor at an HBCU, and I want to teach intro to sociology. Dr. Jackson, you already know, because you see my posts every now and again where I'm writing down my like dream syllabus about, and I want to do something about sociology, or like race, like race and justice in America, something like that. Like, I want to do that a couple times a week, and then vacation in the homes that I've built on different islands. And that's it. Because as we, just think about just the conversation that we have right now, introducing Black HERstory and talking about all of Black women just been working. And we've been not just been working, but we've been slaving. Like they say, slaving in the kitchen. We have been, yes, we have been slaving. And honestly, I think many people, or many women, at least I know for myself, and it sounds like what you're saying too, it's like, I just want rest. And that's okay. Like, I just want rest. I don't want, like,
I don't want to be Superwoman.
Did you not just hear me say I did a bachelor's, a master's, and got a doctorate back to back to back? And you asked me what is next? What is next? Is my pillow.
That's it. I did. I came to do what I came to do. Like, let me get tenure.
Yes.
I'm gonna do my job well,
Right. As Black Twitter says, I knew my assignment.
That's it.
And this is my assignment. And I'm good with that. And I think about too, because I did want to talk about Oprah, Beyonce, and Rihanna. I think about how, we know Beyonce took some time off because she too got overwhelmed with everything and just going. She needed time off. And now it seems like, she has, from that time, has managed her time in a way that it's like, no, I'm not a workhorse. Even to the record label, to my fans, right? Like, I need rest, and I'm going to take rest. Rihanna, Riri, I am still looking for the album. Okay.
When she gets good, well, and ready, like when she gets good and ready. Only.
Exactly. And she will be quick to let you know, stop asking me. Right? Because right now she's in a place where she's exploring other things that are outside of that box. And that's also something that we know, being a workhorse, you can't do anything outside of the box, and that is where she is. She's like, I don't want to do music forever. Or maybe she does, I don't know. But what it seems right now is like, I want to do these other things too. And, and then Oprah, I just feel like Oprah she did her show, she retired from her show, and now she does what she wants on her own terms. Yeah. While I think she is somewhat recreating the Oprah show with like Super Soul Sunday, I'm like, which I'm not upset about Oprah. Oh, I'm not upset about it.
It's, once a week, and
right, still once a week. And
old magazine, which is really just like, the greatest thing. Like, for a person, it's just her.
And for me, because she ends up on every vision board, I'm like, I can get old magazine. Like, I'm not even sure if I actually even read the magazine, but I just like the fact that I see Oprah on the cover of a magazine. But even the one thing that I have always respected about Oprah is even when people might have questioned, where she, like, her loyalty, I feel like where she puts her money has always demonstrated that. And so I appreciate the fact that, you know, when and we still have not received justice, but for Breonna Taylor's murder, that she saw that as a time to say, this is not about me, because she had just for the first time shared her cover with Gail,
Yeah.
right? And she could have still put herself on there with like one of the Breonna Taylor shirts that I see people wearing. But she didn't do that. She put Breonna Taylor on the front. Like, that's it. And then she bought the billboards. She also invests in careers for like Ava DuVernay, who tells stories, oh, so beautifully. I love Ava too, and so I think that in those ways, it's like it's I think that's like a part of the legacy, but like you said, we don't all have to be Oprah, we don't have to be Beyonce, we don't all have to be Rihanna, but we're all going to leave our legacy by completing the assignments.
Yeah. Somebody I really respect, mentioned recently that, you might not be, the chosen one. You might be the one who's preparing, setting the like framework, the groundwork for the one who's chosen. And I think that is good work. That's fine work. That's honorable, respectable, and important work too.
Yes. 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 Because you could be like, you will be the Dr. Burns for somebody,
Yeah.
like that's it.
And I would love to be somebody like her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're like that for me. I always appreciate our conversations. I always learn something from them. Um, and it's motivation and it makes me think like, oh, you know what? I'm talking about Black women in the workplace. I need someone who really understands the history. I'm gonna call Dr. Jackson. Like that that's clear. And I think that's also resonates just for women, as we are the bearers of life, some of us, or we are the nurturers, of life, and of children. That is that is a part of our legacy.
I'm excited for people to see like what's going to happen when Black women do start getting the rest they deserve. Like, because if we're like producing at these rates through through stress and all the other things that I could name, which is an endless list, like wait till we get some rest.
I think it's going to set the world in chaos. Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I'm specifically thinking of when I exited the narrative about this whole job is just such a good narrative for this episode. But when I left I left the job that I had, I told them in March that this was going to be the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, that was a very bold move because some people would be like, okay, bye, before I was ready. I didn't have another job lined up. But I just said, I feel like I've reached the cap here. I am honestly not receiving the support that I need. And for my own mental health, for my own physical health, spiritual health, I had to go. And I did not end up securing another job because I do work for the government. So I didn't end up securing another job until August.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this whole time from March to August, I'm preparing them. Like I'm continuing to say every time they say something that's like, oh yeah, because next year we can or something, I literally will say, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be here next year, right? Like I don't know if I'm gonna be here. Like I'm reminding you,
Yeah.
because I don't want you to plan anything around me and my expertise and my skills and what I bring, because I'm telling you that I'm leaving. Still, Dr. Jackson, when I left in August, it was problematic and it went mayhem. And I ended up having to do like this weird schedule to transition. I ended up still doing some work until December 31st, the vital year, because they just were not prepared for when I said I have to go, like I need rest. And so similarly, I feel like that is what is going to happen, because I don't even think it's not even just white people and larger society that's dependent on Black women, like being the machine, but our own community is also dependent on that. And it's going to be interesting to see how we do it, because it is coming.
I affirm that.
Yeah, like it's already starting. Yeah, it's already starting. So it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. So, do you have any final thoughts, Dr. Jackson, about anything we talked about today, or anything you want to add to this first segment of part one?
Um, I can't say I do. I think this was a
Yeah,
great conversation. Yeah, I really enjoyed being here.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be interested. Like now, I'm gonna definitely write down some of the information and the people and the literature that you quoted today, so you all can look below for that information. And Dr. Jackson, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
They can find me at Just India on. If I'm there, it's Just India. So that's JUSTINDYA. That's on Clubhouse. That's on IG. Probably some other spaces as well. That's where you can find me, Just India. And on Clubhouse, I am the administrator of Big Black HERstory, and we have some events coming up soon, including Black drug history with another professor and friend of mine who I also met 12 years ago at Tuskegee. You might
Yeah.
know because it's been 12
Mhm.
years. But we do Black history related events, and we're, it's a group of people who are I vetted as knowledgeable. So,
Good, good.
but we're doing that here soon. So that's Big Black HERstory on Clubhouse, and Just India on Instagram, on Clubhouse, JUSTINDYA.
Yes, and also note that accompanying this video, which will be available on YouTube and Facebook, which will be the Vocal Action channel on both of those platforms. You can also visit our website at www.vocalactionllc.com for more information about who Dr. Jackson is. You can read her bio there, and
I'm sorry. www.justindia.com.
she got a whole website, okay? www.justindia.com. Okay, you can find her directly. But if you cannot find her directly, you can always come to the Vocal Action LLC website, where we will link. We'll have a bio, and then we will have the link to her website, so you can connect with all things Just India there as well. And we ask that you continue to follow us. We are at Vocal Action LLC on all platforms. So follow, share our profile, share our content. If you're watching here on YouTube today, please like, subscribe, tell a friend about what we're doing, and we will see you in the next episode, which will be part 2 of Black HERstory. And we hope that we hope that we're able to keep your interest to make it through all to make it through all 4 parts, because it is something that is necessary. And if you have any type of questions, please put them below here in the chat, and I will forward them to Dr. Jackson or whoever you see here that is speaking, and we'll get those answers out to you. And if you have any topics that you want us to cover, whether it's through this Black Women in the Workplace Conver-Series or just the Vocal Action platform, let us know that in the comments as well. We would love to have you, or we'd love to find our Black spurts to come and talk about them. So thank you for watching. Bye.